Hello my loves, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rulla Alani, and before we get started, I just want you all to know that I'm still accepting question submissions. So if you'd like me to answer one of your questions in a future video, then make sure to check out the description because I have instructions on how you can submit your question down below. So today we are going to discuss why boundaries and standards makes you more attractive. For some reason, many people think having low standards can help you find a partner. And while yes, that's true, you can find more partners, you're not going to find high quality partners, which is what we are after. True story, when I was in college, my standards and boundaries were pretty much non-existent. I would say yes to plans when I really wanted to say no. I would entertain men who I knew were not making me a priority, and I simply would just go with the flow, even when I felt that I was worthy of better friendships or better romantic relationships. I was not willing to put my foot down and voice what my standards and boundaries were. Well, guess what happened because of that? First off, I was not able to form any meaningful, long-lasting connections with friends. And second, I was not able to form any healthy romantic relationships either. It wasn't until I accepted who I was, the full spectrum of my character, of who I am. It wasn't until I stopped judging myself and I accepted myself for who I was, when I was finally ready to say no, when I didn't want to go out to the club even though my friends wanted to, or when I didn't want to go out on a date with a lousy guy who I knew wasn't up to par with my standards. It wasn't until then that I was finally able to find friends and men who respected me as well as my boundaries. My life completely transformed when I set in stone what my values and morals were, and when I didn't entertain anyone who wasn't willing to respect my boundaries and also respect the standards that I had set in stone for myself. So first off, what is a boundary? Well, a boundary is basically a limit, and I like thinking of it as a personal limit. A boundary can be something as simple as I don't date men who expect me to be in a 50-50 relationship. I don't date men who expect me to split bills and finances with them. That is a personal boundary, and although it might not be the same from person to person, that's what makes boundaries so beautiful and so unique, is they are a reflection of who you are and what you value. So having a boundary should never make us feel any shame or guilt for not conforming to societal standards, right? Just because my boundary is different from yours does not make my boundary any more meaningful or yours any less meaningful. Each of our boundaries holds truth, and it holds value if we're able to actually listen to them and listen to ourselves and our intuition when it's telling us that something is wrong. Having boundaries and standards means that you're not afraid to speak your truth. You're not afraid to voice your opinions, especially in uncomfortable situations. A simple example is if someone raises their voice at you, you could calmly respond with, I don't allow the people in my life to speak to me this way, and you walk away and leave, and you get that person out of your life immediately. Now, it's up to them if they want to change, if they want to become a person who does not speak to you in a tone that you don't tolerate. That's a whole nother story. But the point is that you expressed your boundary, you expressed your standard, your limit, and then you've done your job. You've showed that person what you tolerate and what you do not. Then It's on them as to whether or not they are willing to step up to the plate, because 9 times out of 10, that person will realize that they aren't deserving of you. They're not ready to be with a high quality woman like you. And this is a wonderful way to sift through potential mates, because you can quickly right off the bat see who's willing to be up here, to step up to the boundary and the standards that you placed, or who's already there, who doesn't even need to step up because they have a similar boundary and they understand your boundary. When these situations arise, it's very telling, because it's going to tell you whether or not the person respects you and is willing to step up to the plate, or B, could care less, and then you know they are not worth your time. Another example is if a man texts you late at night wanting to hang out, instead of responding right away and being emotional or starting an argument, just responding the next morning or day and saying, hey, we just recently met and I don't feel comfortable hanging out with you late at night. And I also only go out with men who make plans with me in advance. Now, this guy can think you're crazy or you're asking for the most, and that's going to tell you what kind of guy he is. And if not, and he really is a quality guy but just didn't know those were your limits, he's going to say, oh my God, my apologies. I'm going to make plans in advance next time, and I'm not going to text you late at night. I'm really sorry about that. So those situations are just crucial to any sort of friendship, partnership, even whether it's at work or in school or in your family. You have to let people know what your boundary or limit is, because first off, you shouldn't just expect them to know these things without you expressing it. And second off, once you've expressed it, you can then see who they are. Are they willing to tweak themselves a little, to improve themselves a little, to be deserving of you? Or are they not willing to do that? Are they not willing to improve themselves a little bit to have the chance to go out with you or to be your friend or whatever it might be? In the book, Boundaries in Dating, Making Dating Work by Henry Cloud, John Sims Townsend, boundaries are explained as serving 2 functions. So first and foremost, they define us. They show what we are and are not, what we agree with and disagree with, what we love and hate. So boundaries are really interesting because it lets you know what kind of person you're dealing with or what kind of person you yourself are. Someone who doesn't have any boundaries doesn't mean they're so easygoing and they're cool. It means they don't have self-respect and they don't know themselves well enough to actually define what their boundaries are. So not having boundaries actually isn't a desirable quality. It's not an attractive trait to not have boundaries. People who have boundaries means that they have limits as to what they're willing to tolerate and what they're not willing to tolerate. And that's why they're able to live a life that is favorable, because they don't allow themselves to be in situations that are beyond their boundaries or lower than their standards. The second function that boundaries serve is they protect us by letting others know what we will and will not tolerate. So once again, boundaries can act as a protective layer, because once we've laid our boundaries down and expressed them to someone, then if they're not willing to meet us within our boundaries, within where we're comfortable, then now it's not up to us to keep explaining ourselves or to change them into the person they should be or to force them to respect our boundaries. Then it's up to us to walk away, to know that we deserve better, and to not just let our boundaries crumble because someone isn't willing to do that which is necessary for us to feel comfortable. A quote that I pulled from that book reads, "Dating goes much better when you are defined. When you are clear about your values, preferences, and morals, you solve many problems before they start. So boundaries can be very, very important, especially in the beginning of a friendship or a relationship, because you can make a judgment right off the bat as to whether or not someone is deserving of you, of your time, of your space, of your energy, because you've laid out your boundaries to them, and then you can see whether or not they are actually respecting your boundaries and realizing that your standard is here and they're not meeting the cut. Boundaries act as property lines. So when we have our boundaries laid down, we then only attract people and partners who are willing to act within that boundary. So these people actually value us. They value our limits. They care about our boundaries, and they're not willing to cross them because they respect us and they respect the boundaries that we have put in place. When you find someone who respects your boundaries, you find someone who accepts you for you. It's such a beautiful experience when you find people who accept your boundaries, because then you can be yourself. You can be 100% you without feeling uncomfortable or without feeling guilt or shame or judgment or criticism for being anything that isn't you. Remember that true love, whether it be in a friendship or in a partnership, only develops in an environment where both parties feel heard and feel respected. An example of this, maybe you met this friend who you thought would be a great fit with you, but then they tried to hang out once and you were busy or you had other priorities and they took it to heart and saw it as an attack against them. They do not respect your boundary of time and space. Okay, so that means moving forward, you are not going to be comfortable telling that person when you can't hang out, when you're busy, when you have other obligations, because they don't accept your boundary. They don't respect your boundary enough to say, oh, no worries, let me know when you're available, then we'll set something up. So right away, you can make a call that that person probably isn't going to be a great friend because they don't respect the boundary that you've put in place. Rather than force yourself to say yes to every request, to every time someone asks you to get together or to hang out, you can actually say no. And you can say it with confidence because you know saying no is going to bring you closer to the people who actually respect you and get you. So rather than try to meet others' expectations, listen to your own intuition and to what your desires and needs are, because the more that you say no to what doesn't serve you and to who is not deserving of you, the more the universe will bring you people who are aligned with you. Remember that we teach others how to treat us. It's not someone else's responsibility to learn what makes us tick. It's our responsibility to speak up, to voice our opinion, to say what our boundaries are, and to express our standards so that others can either obey them and step up to the plate to achieve them, or they're gonna keep on pushing because they know they are not deserving of you. It's as simple as that. The people in life who have the best friendships, the best relationships, the best partnerships are the ones who have clearly identified what their boundaries and standards are. They've expressed that, and then they found people eventually who fit that narrative, who aligned with those boundaries and standards. I encourage you all to get to know yourselves better, to identify what you do not tolerate, what your standards are, what your boundaries are, and what it takes for someone to be fully deserving of you. It's only when we know our own boundaries and standards that we're able to attract those who exemplify those qualities. So I hope this video was helpful. Remember that it's nothing to be ashamed of. when we have boundaries and standards. It's actually very attractive to have boundaries and standards, and actually the more boundaries and standards you put for yourself, the more high quality, high caliber people you are going to meet in your life. And on the other hand, if you don't have any boundaries and standards, you are going to meet every average Joe who's going to be the biggest waste of time and definitely not deserving of you. So just remember, it's good to have boundaries, it's good to have high standards, and it's good to voice them to those that we know. I hope that this video was helpful, and I will see you all very soon. Bye!